Civitella's stateside home. Thanks for coming on this beautiful, too hot spring evening, and for wearing your masks in this small space. I'm Hope. I'm the Senior Program Associate here at Civitella in New York. I work here alongside Juliet and Michaela. And we're testing out tonight, doing a live video on our Instagram profile, so welcome to whoever is out there as well. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, there are quite a few new faces here. Civitella Ranieri is an American foundation with an artist residency program in Umbria, Italy. Residents or fellows who are writers, visual artists, composers, architects come from all over the world for 6 weeks of fully funded, well-fed time to work independently and communally without judgment or interruption, as is our mission. Our first group of fellows this season is arriving at the castle 2 weeks from today, and we'll be streaming their short presentations on May 4th if you'd like to join virtually. And on this side of the ocean, our next event will be a Tribeca gallery crawl led by artists Francesco Simecchi and Rob Raphael later in May. We hope you'll come along. We're really excited to be hosting this event tonight in celebration of National Poetry Month, a reading of 5 poets, Mark Doty, Marie Howe, Diane Mehta, Vuong, and Matvei Yankelevich, who were all fellows or director's guests in the past 2 years at Civitella. We'll go in alphabetical order. Each poet will read about 10 minutes or so, and then introduce the following poet. Afterwards, we'll welcome a few questions. As you may have noticed, we have some of the readers' books available for a small donation if you'd like to buy one and have them sign it. All thanks to their generous publishers. Now let me introduce the first poet. Mark Doty is the author of numerous collections of poetry as well as essay collections and memoirs. His most recent book is What is the Grass? A memoir about his poetic relationship with Walt Whitman.
Civitella is, I think, the greatest refuge in the world for artists. And I think it is also the greatest advocate for the artists that I can think of. I've never felt such an opportunity for restoration, reflection, stimulation, community excitement, and sheer beauty. And sheer beauty has, we underestimate the power that has over us, right? The power that has to affect all aspects of our lives. So I'm going to read you 2 poems. They are from a manuscript in progress, and these are very much New York poems. The first one has to do with the co-op apartment building into which I moved 21 years ago. And it was an opportunity to meet a previous generation of New Yorkers, bohemians who had part-time jobs maybe, and could scrape together the tiny amount it cost to buy one of those apartments like 1972, No more such a case. This is called Ghost Story. Pam lived 40 years in apartment 1 and ran our co-op with an iron hand. She ruled by simply keeping needed information to herself. 2 doors opened from her place to the hall. If I came down late, the year at the buzzer didn't work, to greet some man I'd soon come to know, or fumbled hopeless with my keys at 4 a.m., I felt her eye fixed behind a peephole that bent the hallway light around me to a ring of, not shame exactly, but a stubborn residual embarrassment. 2 months dead, she seems to hover still, vigilant, disapproving not on moral grounds, but because you never know. 4 decades her apartment stayed untouched, save that she installed an old upright so heavy the floor beneath it sank. Abrasive, she hated conflict. If anyone stood up to her at a meeting, she'd cry. She earned her MSW at Hunter years before, and afternoons saw clients in a dim, cat-shadowed parlor. I'd see her sometimes ushering them out, beaming at each an utter benevolence so at odds with what I knew of her, it made me dizzy. Sick, past 80, leaning against the stairs she hadn't climbed in years, she reached to touch me through the balustrade and said she was entirely tired of life. Her daughter, a professor in a distant state, had the apartment's contents hauled away and accepted an offer $1.5 million in cash. A floor through, after all, with an airless private garden in the back. The renovation's nearly done. I took a tour, and here's what startled me. That rueful, provoking, sarcastic spirit presided still. For that money, she thought, it ought to be beautiful, modern, nothing for ghosts to catch on. It's hard enough to leave. Don't you know by now I love you all? And I always want to do that in Pam's voice. But don't you know by now I love you all? Okay, so this is a poem which appropriates 3 quotations from other poets. The first is from Elizabeth Bishop. We all feel, she says, about those viewing the moose from the bus window. The second is from Daniel Beatty Quick's translation of Anaximander, an early Greek philosopher, who said, if I can think it, it is near. And the last is from, I think, the underread and marvelous poet Hayden Carruth, who said, it is there, it is so. And this is called, and the title is a quotation as well. This is called Immortal Diamond, which was Gerard Manley Hopkins' way of talking about God. Immortal Diamond. Those gorgeous images the new telescope sends back feels consoling now, on the edge of this era and every other. Beauty inextricable from how long ago, how absurdly far away. Which may be why the stark announcement on a wheel-lit signboard outside my corner bodega rankles so. The nearest galaxy like ours is 15 million light years away. Too early in the morning for a window thrown open on some vastness we won't ever cross. Which may be why a guy on the A train's pounding on a poem framed under acrylic on the car's metal wall, really wailing on it, backing up, hurtling forward, fists and forearms crashing against the text with such fury we seated him half the car. Can the poem be that bad? Maybe knowing it's millions of years of light speed before you're any place remotely like home makes the poem seem cruel or self-indulgent. I'm not about to get close enough to read it, but I confess I'm starting to hate it myself for what it probably doesn't do. We're just trying to hold the day a little steady here, trying to get where we've got to be, and somebody's written a poem that doesn't make the distance between a stanza and a star feel one bit smaller. And somebody does us a favor and publishes it on the train where you can't help but read it, even if it isn't brave or reckless enough to try to make us legible, or say why we're feeling, we all feel, so singular and discontent. The poem I'm afraid to go near probably doesn't do that, but we don't need a maniac eating a poor thing to a shatter. I can't write that desolate poem either. And who'd want to read it anyway, on a train, standing with our fellow strangers? I've been looking at pictures of ancient starlight, and I can tell you what I learned there, what reconfigured my night. A sign to trace the source of a far signal, erratic sometimes in brief pattern beats, intentional, a code. A new telescope found the flicker was staccato starlight, a beam blinking as a dark planet orbited. A huge sphere made only of carbon, pressurized for eons. And you know what that means. One immense diamond. And just beneath the blackening dust of interstellar winds, an unthinkable clarity shot through with those stress lines that write any gleam more visible. The sphere containing, magnifying. Imagine when it turns on its axis and filaments of caught arcs blaze the vaulting of that endless, forever enough. Who was that Greek philosopher who said, if I can think it, it is near? Never mind if we know it by faint pulses only a superb machine can see, or that no traveler will ever trace that epic and glowed lightning to its end should it have one. If it signals, it's to anyone, and meant to say, you are, wherever you are, proximate. It is there. It is so. My next reader is my friend Marie Howe, who we first start you. That's correct, yes. Yeah, that's right, yeah. You're next. Yeah. That's it. And yeah, I can say a lot, but
You said those poems don't seem to be nice. They're gorgeous poems. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Can you all hear me in back? I'm so happy to be here with everyone I'm reading with, whom I know, some I'm just getting to know. Together embodied. Here's a poem called Reincarnation. Sometimes when I look at our dog Jack, I think he might be my radical American history professor come back to make amends. He gazes at me so sorrowfully. "What is it, Jack?" I say. "Why do you look like that?" But Jack doesn't answer. He lies down and rests his head on his paws. Black hair covered nearly all that man's body, thick under his blue Oxford shirt when I put my hand there. Perhaps that accounted for the bow tie. Remember how the professor would lick dripping honey from the jar, lick peanut butter from the knife. A little stubborn, our dog Jack. Shy, we thought. Until the morning my daughter jumped on my bed and Jack sprang at her growling. And the next morning when he rushed towards her growling and bit her skirt and tore it and bit her and broke her skin. And when I went to collar him, bit me, snarling and bit and bit. That's when I was pretty sure he was my history professor. The vet said this happens more often than you'd imagine. He must always be tethered, she said, until he can be trusted. Until he can be trusted. Oh, how interesting. I'm missing a whole stanza. This never happened before. He must always be tethered, she said, until he can be trusted. And no more couch, and no more sleeping in the bed with you, Mama. Not ever. What can I say? Jack may be my American history professor come back after all these years to make amends. Or Jack may be actually and only himself, a dog. That's never happened to me before. I'm missing kind of the crucial part. Okay, so since we're talking about love, here's a poem called The Letter from 1968. And those of us of a certain age remember when this was the way we communicated long distance. Because it was when phone calls were so expensive that you wouldn't be on a long distance phone call for very long in the 60s. But we did write letters. The Letter, 1968. Then he wrote it with his hand and folded the paper and slipped it into the envelope and sealed it with his tongue and pressed it closed so I might open it with my fingers. That he brought it to the box and slipped it through the slot so that it might be carried through time and weather to where I waited on the front porch steps. We knew how to wait then. It was what life was, much of it. So when the mailman came up the walk and didn't have it, he might have it the next day or the next, when it bore the mark of his hand who had written my name, so I might open it and read again, and look at the envelope he'd sealed, and press my mouth to where his mouth had been. And I'll just read one more poem following Mark's excellent example. And it's a poem called The Singularity, also having to do with space, which I was reading, trying to understand a lot about what space is and matter is, and all of us are. And right around that time, Stephen Hawking died. So I got thinking about the singularity, that original piece of matter that blew up into the Big Bang. The singularity. Do you sometimes want to wake up to the singularity we once were? So compact. Nobody needed a bed, or food, or money. Nobody hiding in the school bathroom, or home alone, pulling open the drawer where the pills are kept. for every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. Remember? There was no nature, no them, no tests to determine if the elephant grieves her calf or if the coral reef feels pain. Trashed oceans don't speak English or Farsi or French. Would that we could wake up to what we were when we were ocean. And before that, to when sky was earth and animal was energy and rock was liquid and stars were space and space was not at all nothing. Before we came to believe humans were so important. Before this awful loneliness. Can molecules recall it? What once was? Before anything happened? No I, no we, no one, no was, no verb, no noun. Only a tiny, tiny dot brimming with is. All. Everything. Home. Thank you.
Tell us the name of the next person.
I'm going to. Diane Mehta is here with us. And Diane, has a new book forthcoming, and it's called Tiny Immensity.
Extravagances.
Pardon me?
Extravagances.
Extravagances. That's
Extravagances.
called Tiny Extravaganza. I'm very, very happy to meet you tonight and to hear you. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you everyone for coming, and I thought I would read a poem about someone I met at Civitella, and then the third poem, I'll also read 3 poems instead of like 14. So the third poem will also be about something connected to Civitella, and then my introduction to ocean will also be to Civitella. You'll be surprised. So the first one is about a cellist named Frances Marie Wheaty, who is really just a marvel, and she created this new technique with 2 bows. So she plays with 2 bows, and the entire room fills with spectacular sound. So in this moment, she had said, let's improvise, and she's sort of a star, and I hadn't improvised before, and I was like, no. So she kept trying to convince me, so this is about improvising. And she is searching when she plays for something she calls ghost tones, a sound so low that you can't hear it, or she thinks it's there. So my poems at this point are about other artists or inspired by other artists. So it's called Landscape with Double Bow. Rondeau is what you really want, solo and refrain. We and each the musical improvisation of the operatic day, sonic scavenging and comedic jigging inside some Beckett of one another. Oh, wouldn't it be grand to be a whole note, dragged across a bridge of your singular, sound-expanding double bow, to be orchestral, to be drunk, to drink the velvet sun from the arbor trellis, fruit of purple grapes we plucked, bunches of dolce to color our throats, and that improvised word-spun truth, I, terrified, see, I can't derive on cue, death, light, blueprints that fit the choral codes of what music thinks writing is about. We twisted grape notes so easily off their stems, screw of death in cupped hands. We follow seductions of light. You move above and underneath the strings in C strokes. 1 bow was not enough to match the warmth 2 bows create. So you invented ways to get more harmony, upper bow and under bow, independent but close, staccato and legato and staccato, to choose a way to hear the world and harvest sound in it. Curve of bow, curve of earth, curves your eyes interpret as ultraviolet. Still you want more color, more sound to harvest, more distortion. Pale blue resonators you sculpted in local clay, land and sky, blue above the land, distort the sound you widened already. You are looking for a vibration lower than what the lowest string is tuned to, pitched so low your ear can't find it. Imagination, lore, solo of magma, baritone of fantasia. I cannot rogue my syllables and improvise around temptation, ears like yours, the love, the glut, the secret, the grand distortions of your polyphonic heart, which believes in ghost tones. What is truth? Grapes chandelier from the arbor and ripen on the tongue. We jammed the grapes inside a bowl, so plentiful, and ate their tiny hearts at lunch. I'm going to read a second poem called Plum Cake. I'd make a plum cake when she died, a lamentation, grief bake, cottage through blood recipe, all of its colors shrieking at me, a sweet take on her love. I gaze at the street. Tree branches out front are tangled. My floor is slanted. My house cage is so small and dark for all the summits, slopes, and swamps of feeling. I am not to be purple plum decided in any still life of grief or reminiscence. No wafer-like religious feeling. Never. She will never be human again. I knew I wouldn't make it. Italian plums are sweetest. I should find them in a market when days are longer. Fruit of aging, gift of goodness. A friend who lost a friend and made the cake said plum 6 times in one paragraph, so full of yearning are our phrases. Snow bright is her hair on the bed, knobby knuckle skin folded on her chest. She'd be delighted to celebrate her death. I love that, she'd say happily about the plum cake wake. Plums pooled around the cake slab in the photograph, bloody and marvelous. Skylight took her in. I couldn't make it. Okay, so my last poem is called Elementary Principles, and it is connected to Civitella in that the cellist, Francis, and a porcelain artist named Mary Carlson, who is in here somewhere over there. I used to take long walks up the hill listening to these Dante lectures, and I'd read a bunch of the Inferno's translations when I was younger. I hadn't really read the whole thing as an adult really closely, so I was planning on reading it. And then Mary said she wanted to read it. They didn't have the right translation at Civitella. You guys have to get more translations. And I got home and I started reading Purgatorio. There was a new New York Review Books translation out. It's fantastic by psychologists. So Mary and the cellist and I all started reading the Divine Comedy. We're now on Paradiso, Canto 29. We have taken 14 months so far. And at some point we decided that we would read it slower and slower, 1 canto a week. And now we have decided we will read it forever, over and over, till we die. I hopefully it would be the last to die. That would be sad. So thank you, Civitella, for Mary and Francis, and for my new love, the Divine Comedy. Elementary Principles doesn't really take place. So in the Terrace of Pride in Purgatorio, Dante is talking about art, Giotto and Cimabue, for anyone who's familiar, and he has an acrostic named, I think is Vuong, U-O-M or U-O-M-O in Italian on the left side as he's rhyming, Terza Rima on the right, and he is trying to tell us that God's art is better than any other art. There is no comparison for God's art, and so God has carved these sculptures into the wall. And then he decides that he will try to do as well as God, because he's on the Terrace of Pride. And so with ambition and with his effort to try to be the greatest poet in the world, which I think he did become, he also has to risk being proud, and he's already in purgatory, so we know he's going to paradise. So it's called Elementary Principles. I have a rhyme scheme, A-B-A-B, C-C. In the last stanza, I tried to be as ambitious as Dante. This poem took me a very long time. It was excruciating and grueling, and I didn't think I could do it. So the last stanza, I have an acrostic, loving, down the front, since we were talking about loving. So I thought I would put something really simple, and I tried to write the way Dante writes, which is very dolce stil novo, the sweet poems of 1300s, and very precise. This man is very precise. He doesn't swing away. He's so tight with his rhymes. So it was an exciting poem for me to write, probably the most exciting poem ever, because it was so difficult, and it was humbling. And that's it. So elementary principles. Reverse the story and be the source of why love melted over us and we forgot ourselves. Life flew across the street, below a sky bluer than the blue our eyes perceive wave-lengthening, lacking all circumference, and bewildering our fantasy of making sense. We think and climb the mesmerizing way straight up, and ask, what is the measure of our days? Is it consolation, or is it praise? Do we nourish all the dreams we treasure before our bones are in the ground, and let them be everywhere and profound? And certainly we arrive with singing rhymes and concordances of facts, gambling that infinity has a rhythm and a time beyond memory, feeling in the end a beginning, spectral and invented, the source of why love is the intensest story of desire. Lamenting less, uneasily, we walk, observing, in conversation and in art, vita imaginata. On this, we state interior musings, to know the nature of our hearts, narrowing the mind to the motion of the mind, grandly illuminating the love we find. Thank you. So, I know Ocean's work some, and we've never met, so I was very excited, and I spent a lot of time on YouTube listening to Ocean read. He reads so beautifully, and I thought, what can I say about him? Can I talk about his reading? Can I talk about this? I listened to him and Krista Tippett, and then finally I thought, okay, so then I thought, well, this is going to be Civitella, so I emailed my friend Vuong, who went to Civitella with you, and who I met at Yaddo this fall, and I said, Lou, what can I say about Ocean? So I'm just going to read you what she said. It's fun to read this. Okay, It will be fun for you two to meet. He writes his experience as an immigrant and growing up with strong women in his house. The mother and grandmother, and the writing is very intimate. Also, words are so well chosen. The novel is emotionally intense and dramatically captivating. You couldn't tell how much is autobiographical and how much is fictional. But you are, in the end, fully engaged with the characters that you could have a tea with them. He is remarkable with words, despite how personal the stories are. Next text. He likes taking a stroll after dinner. He is very down-to-earth, empathetic, and humorous person in real life. He can also sing beautifully a cappella. Please say hi to Ocean from me. And I don't know if I'm helpful at all. At Civitella, we took walks together after dinner. I used to take those walks with my parents. It was very special. It's like family time.
Thank you so much for that. It's like a Civitella collaboration. I have fond memories with Vuong. I was in the Arco when I was there. Vuong's piano would trickle across the courtyard, and it was a perfect excuse listening to her piano to not write. It's like, no, I'm a poet. I'm soaking up the moment. I don't have to write. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for Civitella for having us to celebrate National Poetry Month, and to be in kinship with such incredible writers whose work I adore. I have this kind of strange relationship with publishing a book where I feel like it was all a fluke until I can write one more poem, and so it's very trepidatious. since then. So it took me a year to finally write a new poem. But I feel when you arrive at the poem, it's, oh, my life has not been a complete lie. You know, it's like it's not a fluke. This is real. I can do this. You know. So this is the poem that came out of it. It's new, so I apologize ahead of time if it's bad. But this is the nature of Civitella. Not bad poems, but making new things. Okay. Can you hear me all right? Okay, good. Sometimes my voice stops here. This is called Theology. Do you remember when I tried to be good? It was a bad time. So much was burning without a source. I'm sorry, I was so young. I didn't mean it. It's just this thing is so heavy. How could anyone hold all of it and not melt? I thought gravity was a law, which meant it could be broken. But it's more like a language. Once you're in it, you never get out. An idiot, I climbed out the window just to look at the stars. It was too dark, and the crickets sounded like people I know saying something I don't. I think I had brothers. I think I heard them crying once, then laughing, until the laughing was just in my head. That's how it is here, leaky. One day, while crossing the creek, I met a boy. His lips red as a scraped knee. When our eyes met, he gasped, then raised his rifle. That's how I found out I was a squirrel. That's how I lost my tail, the only thing I was great at. I don't know what my name is, but I can feel it. A sensation in the blood. Last night I heard a voice and climbed to the tallest branch. So high I forgot all the rules. That there was rules. It was like being skinned into purpose. Below me was a rectangle the man had been digging all night. I watched him a long time, his body a question mark, unraveling. When the light grew pink, the man stopped. Others, in black coats, gathered around him. Though I know I was put here for a reason, I spend most of my days just missing everybody. The man lowered a box into the slot he had dug, as if pushing a coin into a giant machine. That must be how they pay to be here. That must be why it started to snow. Strange. I didn't know monsters could be so sad. This poem's called American Legend, and it's after Robert Creeley's I Know a Man about driving. I like to think a lot of my work is mythologization. And this is quintessentially so because it's about driving, but I can't drive. I drive in my poems. American Legend. So I was driving with my old man. The day wasted, save for the cobalt haze closing around us. We were on our way to kill our dog, Susan. I mean, we had to bring her to the clinic to put her down, this murder. Or maybe they meant put her in the ground, though I knew Susan would be ashed in the incinerator out back. Puffs of smoke, little ghosts, poodles. Where was I going with this? Right, the car, the rain, the legend of joy and pain, my old man and I, the Ford big enough for us to never touch. And maybe I meant to make the hairpin turn too hard, and the thing flipped like a new law going 80. Maybe I wanted at last to feel him against me, and it worked. As the colors spun through the windshield, wild meadow clanking our shoulders, the sudden wetness warm everywhere, he slammed into me, and we hugged for the first time in decades. It was perfect and wrong, like money on fire. The skin around his neck so soft, his aftershave somehow summer. It lasted not a second, but he was smiling, his teeth already half gone, as if someone wiped them away to make room for something truer. Put it down on the page, son, he said one night, after telling me why he did what he did with his life shit-faced on Hennessy. We were sitting at the kitchen table before his shift at the sock factory, his eyes raindrops in a nightmare. I touched him, then let go. The car stopped rolling. We hung upside down as things dripped, steam or breath. I did what any boy would do after getting exactly what he wanted. I kissed my father. He grinned, I think, his pupils elsewhere. I reached back, unlatched the cage. The dog stepped out, sniffed my old man, still warm, then ran into the trees, into her second future. I walked from the wreck until the yards became years, the dirt road a city, until my face became this face, and the rain washed the gasoline clean from my fingers. I found a payphone in the heart of the poem and called you, collect, to say all this knowing it won't make a difference, only more. So hello, hi. The blood inside my hands is now inside the world. Words, the prophets tell us, destroy nothing they can't rebuild. I did it to hold my father, to free my dog. It's an old story, mother. Anyone can tell it. This last one is in the voice of the last dinosaur on Earth. I don't know why. The last dinosaur. When they ask me what it's like, I tell them, imagine being born in a hospice on fire. As my relatives melted, I stood on one leg, raised my arms, shut my eyes, and thought, tree, 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 as death passed me, untouched. I didn't know God saw in us a failed attempt at heaven. Didn't know my eyes had 3 shades of white, but only one image of my mother. She's standing under an ancient redwood, sad that her time on earth is all she owns. Oh, human, I'm not mad at you for winning, but that you never wished for more. Emperor of language, why didn't you master no without forgetting maybe? Sure, we can make out if you want, but I'm warning you, it's a lot. Sometimes I think gravity was like to be brutally honest and then never stop talking. I guess what I mean is that I ate the apple not because the man lied when he said I was born of his rib, but that I wanted to fill myself with its hunger for the ground, where the bones of my people still dream of me. I bet the light on this page isn't invented yet. I bet you never guessed that my ass was once a small town wonder, that the triceratops went nuts when I danced. How once, after weeks of drought, I walked through my brother's laughter just to feel the rain. Oh, wind-broke wanderer, widow of hope and ha-has. Oh, sister, dropped seed, help me. I was made to die, but I'm here to stay. and a book that has been stayed in my wheelhouse for a long time, Forest on the Shore, and was founder of one of my favorite presses, one of the sort of beacons of the 21st century in poetry publishing, Ugly Duckling Press, who published Jenny Stella, a dear friend of mine, and someone I've been wanting to meet and say thank you for all of the work you've done for so long. And my friend Peter Gizzi sends his regards and love. So, Matvei Yankelevich.
I've been wanting to meet you too. We corresponded, like with so many people. So I'm going to read briefly from the one kind of poem I've been writing recently, or maybe 8 years now, which all have to do with winter, so it's a bit ironic today, or out of place. I want to say first thanks to Civitella and everybody who's read, everybody who came, and that if you've got tons and tons of money in a checkbook, you should donate to Civitella, because they support this time that we get that was incredibly important for me, and I know for others, and the friendships that emerged from Civitella. I'm glad to see some of my fellow residencers here. But also, if you just have $5 or $10, I think you can buy a book, and all the proceeds go to Civitella to make the kind of thing happen. So thanks again, and so I'm going to read from this chapter of Dead Winter, which came out recently, and maybe a couple other poems from this longer series. Can you hear me back there? Okay. And I'll start maybe with a poem that came to mind because of Marie's poem about the letter, or obsolete technologies. In a disjunctive age, disconsolate, without connection, I lick this postage stamp, a thing that you may not have ever licked. Pulp paper trails the color of cracked walnut shells and cork boards. To write this is to stay up till tomorrow, cannot be a day to read about the dead, tear further troubles to have later seams to mend, put forth exhaustion from which to recover, tame rhetoric in its wide, trembling circus tent. Word for word I change, to pass through night in pace with night, time as if bravely lost, but lost all the same. There's no decision left to make. Choice narrows down the lane. In time, the brooks and soldiers run away from tinny villanelles. Even your name, your status update, divorced, vacating job, collecting dust, disheartened, now deceased, means little, if at all, a thing it is to be. Compared to what? Compared to winter's day, the heat of these laughable plastic keys. Winter, a landscape in questions, old punctuation. The floorboards creaking, I step out to bitter moons. Don't worry, the notebooks are all with the proper authorities. Such little things make life, and buttonholes let it seep out. It can happen in no time, and now it's over. The window cracks the landscape into allegory. The grove of spruce or pine over there, it stands apart. The planter is full, and it's only February. To have a book to read and not to read it. Smoke out a window at the rain, someone to talk to, but not to talk with them. Silence, but for plastic keys struck softly. No bell for waking or for sleep, tolling the eights on chestnut desk. Who will continue here once roads are open after winter's close? With winter settling on the place, the sedge is dry, the woods stand bare. No enemy to you, I watch the shadow of one hill rise on the opposite. The valley sheds its golden skin, grows dull before it drops in darkness. Sounds sharpen, shards of dry leaves, wings flap, the shake of an abandoned branch. Outcroppings lose their yellow to the gray, the swallows drilling holes in the blue air. More smaller life beats in each metric cube than in all of my body there is life. The wind is noise, the wind is movement. Live branches mingle with the dead. I'm barely bigger than the ants, slower than spiders. I don't move the way these insects scurry. The beetle has no map of the terrain. They can't see all of me at once. Each knows nothing of what the other thinks. I'm not a stone nor a bug. That knowledge only separates me from cicadas sleeping under my feet. Flies will far outlive me. The laundry stiffens. Stars, like sheets of white, sing fearlessly of their own howling. This perverse season has no fantasy. Your absence deeper than the gorge, empty geological truths that come between things. Winter is the rest of life I can't get started in poems. Fires, hunger, sucking the air out of crushed plains where one breathes haltingly for pity that one not be forgotten as one that once was a conduit, a stage, a banner in the wind, a song for nations to spread wide on lips, commonplace flower blossoming in darkness. The planets, what to do with their expanse, centuries turning. They groan upon their axis as my nose hair grows, my shoulders all blade, churning in their discus toss, their remotely personal pain. Just this theater from here to the end of Barkeep's reach, eggs and milk on automatic belt toward final reckoning. Proof of my purchase, consumer satisfactions guaranteed, after which they no longer belong to the market. So in exchange the planets turn as turnstiles to face me with their other faces, moons. Yet with the Pleiades gone to their lovers, I keep vigil as Byron watched Lucretia's lot, to endure my summers, rank odors of springtime, to find no fixed truths, even in signs I stand with and hangnails. I turn on the lamp to move dark out, and seeing your hand, I wept like Williams weeping, necrophiliac, at the little pharaoh's glove. I think I'll read these two more. Sound good? Okay. Now that it's winter, might pray to green trees to see the star bring in a season in which I sit metastasizing in my briefs by the breeze of a blue fan with some same complaints, so that if you came upon me there now, you would not recognize me, but it's me. It's the curve of my back, same emails, same friend requests ignored. Should I give up for Martians don't speak through me? I'm observing this lack of purpose proliferate in my cell walls. My whole awareness is of distraction. Doubt my erotic verse will come to light, bright residency, or exile on the Black Sea, where I'd stare at brutal resorts built over the beach. Can't say I'm fond of this coercion, but every night I try to do something with meaning to break what keeps coming back. So I tie up a sack and anchor a word to the bottom of water. It's a syntax, but it's not a life. And I'll close with the new poem written kind of around the anniversary, or the first anniversary of the war in Ukraine, or war on Ukraine. It's called No Home Poem. To say my eyes are failing, say my sight is failing. To say I have no home, say I'm far from home. Say it's a long way to go. Say there's nowhere to go. Say, they say, go back where you came from. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Say, they say, go where your eyes take you. Go on, they say, get. To say, I have no home, say, my eyes are failing. To say, war without end, say, may peace come soon. Peace talks, they say, are on the table. To say, can't you hear me? Say, speak English. To say, what language do you speak? Say, do you come from beyond the hill? Whose home is this? Who's coming to dinner? Whose side are you on? Who's going to clean up this mess, Pushkin? To say, anybody home? Say, winter is on the doorstep. To say, nobody's home. Say, just us mice. How do you say doorstep? Over there, they say doorstep with threshold. How do you spell winter? Over there, they spell winter with a Z. Thanks so much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the Q&A. We've been waiting for it. It's here. If there is one. Is that right? No?
No, that was great.
Oh.
If there are no questions, there might be a little bit more wine.
Okay, good.
Great. Lots of books.
That's great.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.